Today on the show, we're going to talk about John Constantine. If you didn't know that over the years, this character has actually outsmarted the rulers of heaven and hell over and over again, then this show is for you. So, John Constantine. He would first appear in Swamp Thing Volume 2, number 37 in 1985, and was actually created by Alan Moore, who, for all of you that don't know, created titles such as V for Vendetta, Watchmen, and Promethea. Recently, I've actually had to come to terms with the fact that not many people outside of the comic book world know who John Constantine is, which is really surprising to me and really hard for me to get my head around because he was the lead character of Hellblazer, and Hellblazer ran from 1988 to 2013, and it's the longest running Vertigo title, so it's not like he's a D-list character or something. What I find really interesting is Constantine's creation. You see, Alan Moore has actually said that Constantine isn't just one idea thought up and put onto paper, but he's actually about 10 ideas all puzzled together. And these ideas included detectives, necromancers, sorcerers, and the want to draw the sting in a comic. So yes, just to reiterate that, Constantine was originally created because they wanted to have the sting inside of a comic book, but the character obviously quickly evolved far beyond that. I do just want you to know that because Hellblazer started in 1988, it was one of DC's mature reader titles, then in 1993 it was swapped over to the Vertigo imprint, which is a very good thing. There is another thing that all of you need to take note of. So Constantine appears in Vertigo and in DC titles. However, as of after Flashpoint, the Constantine in the New 52 is not the same Constantine in Hellblazer. They're from two different universes. This being said, there was a Constantine that appeared after Brightest Day, and it's not really made clear if that is the same Constantine in the Vertigo titles, purely because it doesn't really matter. Another thing I find really interesting about this character that really sets him apart from most comic book characters is that he ages in real time. You see, in 1988, he celebrated his 35th birthday, then in 1993, it was revealed that he turned 40. I do just want you to take note of the fact that the New 52 Constantine does not age in real time, which I personally feel is a really big missed opportunity, though I can kind of understand why they do that. Now, I know a number of you are probably going, well, all this information is nice, but who the hell is Constantine? Well, to learn about that, we're going to have to go to his childhood. So, John Constantine, born May 10th in 1953, and he was actually a twin, but his twin brother died in the womb, and also his mother Mary Ann died while giving birth. While I'm not really sure why Mary Ann died, I can give you an explanation behind the twins' death. You see, while in the womb, John actually strangled his twin brother with an umbilical cord. John and his father grew to hate each other's guts, and John's father would quickly turn to alcoholism and would be imprisoned after he broke into his neighbor's house and would try stealing his female neighbor's underwear. During this time, John and his big sister Cheryl would move to Northampton, where they would stay with their aunt and uncle. John began practicing magic from a very, very young age. You see, John's family had a number of stories about great mages that they were descendants of. In fact, most of them had amazing control over synchronicity and had tricked gods out of gold. For John's first act of magic, he rid himself of his childhood innocence and vulnerability and hid it inside a box. Then, in the 1960s, as a teenager, John would place a curse on his father to make him old and frail and would run away to London, where he would meet his best friend for life, Francis Chas Chandler. So through the 1970s into the 1980s, a whole bunch of little nothings that kind of shape John happen, and these include forming a band, entering a relationship with Zatanna, and accurately predicting the president's death. Now we're at 1985, where John finally gets to meet Swamp Thing. You see, John had been interested with Swamp Thing for a while, and when he finally gets to meet it, he becomes its protector, its guardian, its guide, and even its voice of omen. The two would stay together for quite some time, which I think in this really weird, twisted way is kind of sweet. Then, while on tour with his band, John found the aftermath of a magical spell gone horribly, horribly wrong. You see, Astra, an abused child, had managed to conjure a monster, and this monster refused to leave. John then got members of the band and a couple of occultist friends to summon a demon of their own, and it worked, and it defeated Astra's monster, but it wasn't under their control whatsoever. It tortured all of John's friends and took Astra to hell with it. John would actually be framed for Astra's death, and he would be committed to Ravenscar's psychiatric hospital. We won't really be covering this later on in the video, so I might as well say it now. It is worth noting that John does indeed free Astra from hell later on in his life, and he also frees every child that was trapped in hell, which is a very nice thing for him to do. Over the years, John will call in a lot of friends for help on his adventures, which isn't a bad thing, but he was really careless with who he chose, and as a result, a lot of his friends died. So now we're at my favourite part of Hellblazer. In 1991, John contracts lung cancer, and his friend, Brendan, is dying. There was a bit of an issue here though. Brendan had sold his soul to the First of the Fallen, which was the most powerful overlord in hell, but John was able to trick the First into drinking holy water, which stopped him from collecting Brendan's soul. So the First is all like, when you die, I'm gonna make sure you suffer in hell, but then John sells his soul to the other two lords of hell, and when the three of them find out what John's done, they're like, oh crap, we can't let him die, otherwise we're gonna have to go to war, and there can only be one survivor, and the one survivor has to be God, and none of us really want to do that. The three of them decide to cure John of his cancer, which was a really good thing, but the First does get revenge on John by killing off most of his friends, which was sad. The First would then get even more revenge on John by taking away all his worst attributes and giving them their own existence in the form of Demon Constantine, but because his worst attributes had their own existence now, it meant John could never go to hell. So John wanted that dark side back inside of him. It made quite a big chunk of his personality. So to get that back, he tried using the Demon Ellie, and the Demon Ellie wasn't too happy about that, and she tried to get revenge on John, and a whole mess of things happened, and it resulted in Ellie being trapped in hell, and a lot of John's surviving friends ended up leaving him. John eventually got tired of all this hell and demon stuff, so he decided to go and have a bit of a chat with God. You know, as you do. So John and God have a bit of a chat over a campfire, and John says to God, look, Mr. Godman, I am one really, really powerful magic dude. I'm crazy powerful. So if you send me to hell, I will rise to power so quickly you won't even know what to do, and then I will unleash all of hell's demons onto earth, and I will lock hell's gates away so the damned will never have a place to rest. So don't send me to hell. And God is all like, okay, not sending you to hell is probably a good thing for me to do, but you know bad things are still going to happen to you. Now we're at 2003, and John would find out that his sister was still alive, and then he would get involved with a magic war in London, and then he would find out that his niece Gemma had become a witch. A whole mess of things would happen in this time period, and none of it is really relevant in the long run. The only things that you need to take note of is that John would end up fathering 3 demon children while he was an amnesiac. He would end up having to go to hell with the demon Nurgle to retrieve his sister's soul, and now that's about it. So while in hell, John and Nurgle encounter the demon Constantine, who wants the original Constantine dead because of reasons, and the only way to defeat him is for John to let Nurgle possess him, and that happens and the demon Constantine is defeated. So John and Nurgle continue their journey through hell, and they find a feast that's going on that has all 3 of John's demon children, the First, and various other demons in attendance. Also, because of the earlier possession, any damage done to John's body damaged Nurgle's body, and this worked vice versa as well. John gets up and is all like, Rosa Carnis, kill me and let my sister go. And Rosa Carnis goes to kill John, but then the first kills Rosa Carnis and is like, no, if your soul is gonna belong to anyone, it's gonna belong to me. The first then kills 2 of the demon children, the 2 sons, but leaves the daughter alive because she was questioning whether she wanted to be alive or not anyway, was probably gonna kill herself. Following this, the first commands Nurgle to release the soul that he's holding, and it is Cheryl's soul. Cheryl's soul is pure, which means it has no place in hell, but then the first is all like, hey Cheryl, you know, your husband killed himself after killing another person, which means he's twice damned, but if you willingly stay in hell, I can split the punishment. Now John tries explaining to Cheryl that her husband actually killed her, but as much as John tries, it doesn't work, and Cheryl agrees to stay in hell, and the first sends John home, and John has to explain to Gemma exactly what happened down in hell. Gemma is a witch, so she knows better than the average person what it means when a soul is stuck in hell, and she begins to cry, so John runs away barefoot into the Liverpool night. I'm gonna skip forward quite a bit here. I think the only thing that you really need to take note of is that during this time period, John quite literally kills off all of his painful memories that had been weighing him down for years. Much later on, a Sundanese shaman begins having dreams of Constantine and a war mage named Mako. See, Constantine is the laughing magician and is also known as the Constant One, and if Mako were to devour Constantine, he would become a permanent fixture in the universe. The shaman manages to counter the attack, but then John notices that there's something wrong with everything. Then John decides to summon his unborn brother's soul, but he actually summons himself to his unborn brother, and his unborn brother is all like, you know, I wasn't supposed to die in the womb, you were. The brother suggests that they merge their souls and together make the world a better place, but they'd actually tried this before and it failed horrendously because John was way too strong-willed. John mulls this situation over for a moment, and he realizes that his life has been going bad since the first merge. After the first merge attempt, he got cancer, none of his relationships work out, all of his friends leave him, and he realizes that it's his unborn brother's attachment to his soul that's trying to weaken his will so that the merge can never fail. So John did what any normal person that had the power of the occult and realized their dead brother was ruining their life would do, and quite literally cut his dead brother's soul from his own soul. By doing this, this separated the 2 souls and John could finally take full control of his own life. Then the 2010s would hit, but we're not going to cover this out of respect for the artists and the writers. Instead, we're going to talk about John in the brightest day aftermath in the DC universe. So we all know that John and Swamp Thing had a bit of a history with one another. Then, in brightest day, Alec Holland came back from the dead, which means Swamp Thing came back with him. Constantine began to look into things when dead bodies began to pop up everywhere, and they were killed by Swamp Thing. And eventually, John would find Swamp Thing, but Swamp Thing would attack him. To try and find Swamp Thing, John would ask Batman for help, and Batman would essentially refuse, but then Superman takes John to the outskirts of Star City Forest, where Swamp Thing attacks him yet again. So it turns out that without Alec Holland's consciousness, the Swamp Thing was just this savage plant mutation of the green that wanted rid of humanity. In addition to that, Swamp Thing didn't want to kill John, it wanted to absorb him as a host. John would then team up with Batman and Superman, and they would calm down the green at its core while stopping LexCorp from taking control of it. Then Alec Holland would find out that if he wants to merge with Swamp Thing again, he would have to die, and Alec is all like, but I want to live. And then John is all like, you know what, I'm 100% done, and leaves. And then the New 52 is a thing, but we're not really going to get into that because I kind of covered all the key points of that in my History of Zatanna video when I talk about Justice League Dark and that. I guess my opinion on the New 52 Constantine is that he's a second attempt at something that didn't need a second attempt, and in those situations, they can either go fantastically or they can be really, really awkward to watch happen. Because Hellblazer was such a long-running comic, 1 year is not long enough for us to tell if it's going to be really good or really awkward. In that first year, because Hellblazer was so good, Constantine is just going to be awkward no matter what. In my opinion, you can't mess up John Constantine. You have to be a horrendous writer to mess up Constantine. He is a limitless character. So it really confuses me why people are worried, because this character has no limit, and if the writer has imagination, this character is going to be great. I'm excited to see this character because he truly is limitless, and it's actually the Hellblazer comic book scripts that got me into writing comics myself. It's super effective! Okay guys, that is it for today. If you think I missed anything important about Constantine, please let me know in the comments down below. And also don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more history. And also don't forget to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. My name is Faust, this has been Exploring Comics, and it is super effective.